Chuck Grassley now putting political expediency over everything else. He is, of course, the ranking Republican on the all-powerful Judiciary Committee. In fact, Senator Grassley is the longest-serving Republican in the entire U.S. Senate. And he's standing side by side, smiling, accepting the endorsement of a man that just, a few months ago he called extreme and irresponsible. Grassley giving Trump's rally in Iowa credibility, in fact, by showing up, smiling through the event, even after Trump took the stage and lied and lied and lied.
First of all, he didn't get elected. Okay, forget that. A totally corrupt election. It's all because of the corrupt election. They rigged the election. This is not about me being robbed of an election.
Every one of those statements, of course, a brazen, basic lie. And perhaps, as much a lie as saying the sun rotates around the earth. I mean, that's just how basic this is. Senator Grassley knows that. And he also knows that these lies are more than just words, because he was in the Capitol when rioters were tearing through it. And in the aftermath, he released a statement. In fact, that evening, Senator Chuck Grassley said, quote, "Today's violent attack on the U.S. Capitol was an attack on American democracy itself." 5 days later, January 11th, Senator Chuck Grassley tells reporters, quote, "Right now, there's very little opportunity for him, Trump, to lead the Republican Party." And he went on. Here he is.
Look to January 20th, and there's no Trump around anymore, and history is going to judge what he has done. That sort of insurrection is uncountable, and the president's comments didn't help the matter any, and made it worse.
They made it worse. Well, weeks later, February 13th, Grassley releases a statement. I read again. President Trump continued to argue that the election had been stolen even though the courts didn't back up his claims. He belittled and harassed elected officials across the country to get his way. He encouraged his own loyal Vice President Mike Pence to take extraordinary and unconstitutional actions during the Electoral College count. There's no doubt in my mind that President Trump's language was extreme, aggressive, and irresponsible. Okay, saying it like it is. But 9 months later, Trump's tune has gotten more extreme. I mean, he now says the insurrection was actually Election Day. Right? That was the insurrection. His language as extreme, as aggressive, as irresponsible as ever. And yet, now Chuck Grassley, third in line to the presidency, looking the other way, joining the stage, smiling and accepting the endorsement. And this is Trump's game plan now, to stack the decks, get Republicans like Grassley in his corner, take out secretaries of state and governors in key battleground states who won't back his big lie, so that if he runs again, he will have people willing to do his dirty work and parrot false things about voting machines and, I don't know, people from Italy hacking into them and changing the vote counts. This is the crazy stuff he said, right? Just so he can win. People like Congressman Steve Scalise, the second highest ranking Republican in the House, who right now refuses to acknowledge that Biden won legitimately.
So you think the election was stolen?
What I said is there are states that didn't follow their legislatively set rules.
Well, last time, I promise, do you think the election was stolen or not? I understand you think there were irregularities and things that need to be fixed. Do you think the election was stolen?
Yeah. And it's not just irregular. It's states that did not follow the laws set, which the Constitution says they're supposed to follow.
It's pretty stunning. Steve Scalise is not a stupid person. He's a smart person, refusing to just acknowledge a basic fact and seemingly clueless as to the damage he does in perpetuating such lies. He's the number 2 Republican in the House, and he refuses to say a basic fact, that the 2020 election wasn't stolen. But shortly after that answer, Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney came out and tweeted of Scalise, "Millions of Americans have been sold a fraud, that the election was stolen. Republicans have a duty to tell the American people that this is not true. Perpetuating the big lie is an attack on the core of our constitutional republic." Unfortunately, Trump has made pushing these lies a litmus test for Republicans, and they have allowed him to make it a litmus test. So now they're either side by side with him or somehow their careers are over. Bob, of course, also associate editor of The Washington Post. So, Bob, I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Senator Grassley, I remember the first time I met Senator Grassley. It was many, many years ago. He's the most senior member of the Senate. And I know that you have known him a very long time, covered him. Does it surprise you, just looking at that history of all the things that he was so clear about saying months ago, that he's now doing a 180 and sharing the stage with Trump and happily accepting his endorsement?
Well, first of all, we've got to figure out what's really going on here. And I remember George Kennan, the father of the containment strategy with the Soviet Union, once referred to what he called the treacherous curtain of deference, where people go into the Oval Office or deal with the president and they're deferential. What's going on now really is an iron curtain of obedience to Trump. It's not just polite deference, it is obedience, and it really is an iron curtain because it's so strong. These people, like Senator Grassley, can count, they can look at the polls, they go to their home states, they talk to constituents, and there are tens of millions of people who support Trump. And in the Republican Party, it's over 50% probably. So this is a political strength that we have rarely seen, never seen from a former president. After Nixon resigned, he didn't go out in campaign. He conducted a war against history to say Watergate was really just a blip, but the tapes buried Nixon and showed that that was not true. In the press, I think what we've got to do, and one thing Robert Costa and I did in our book, is we looked at these claims of the stolen election and found documents that Rudy Giuliani had sent to Lindsey Graham, a now famous memo that John Eastman, the lawyer working for Trump in the White House, sent, which was really just a battle plan for a coup. And two of the most Trump-supporting Republicans in the party investigated independently. Lindsey Graham did, Senator Mike Lee of Utah, and they discovered there is absolutely a zero there. Yeah. So, we're just going to have to find more evidence to what happened. What Costa and I did, we realized we had to look at this, and it's the first proof, I think, that's out there that it's a totally bogus claim, and it's made by Trump supporters.
So I want to understand, though, because when you bring up Nixon, right, and obviously you and Carl Bernstein had, exposed his role in Watergate. And at first Republicans stood by him, right, and then they turned. What I find fascinating about this situation, Bob, is that at first, now, I'm not talking about over the past 4 years. Let's just take it right after the insurrection. Right after the insurrection, there were Republicans like Chuck Grassley who stood up and called it like it is. Right? Mitch McConnell did at the time. Even Kevin McCarthy did. And yet now they're going back the other way. They all gave up, acted as if it didn't happen, and are now back with, as you call it, the Iron Curtain of deference. Why is that?
Why? Because they can read the numbers. Let's face it, Trump's popularity, his power in the Republican Party has grown since he left office. It has not shrunk. And so there is work to be done to look at this and get the story out. Now, the January 6th committee has an important role. I'm not sure they're going to get what they really need, are hearings where people can see witnesses say this happened. In Watergate, Sam Ervin ran probably the gold standard of congressional investigations and got all the big players to testify under oath. I don't know whether that's going to happen. If that doesn't happen, the story, the true story, will not emerge sufficiently.
Well, I mean, it is incredible because, as you point out, the only thing that you can do is to keep speaking the truth and find more documents. And yet, the number of American people who are listening and who would actually be moved by that, it doesn't seem to change. When you talk about the January 6th committee, I just wanted to ask you about Steve Bannon specifically, because I know that you reported that Bannon had urged Trump to focus on January 6th. And you quote Bannon as saying, quote, "We're going to bury Biden on January 6th. Now, Bannon...
We're going to bury him in the crib at the beginning of his presidency. It's one, I mean, bury is a word that has a lot of power, particularly in the days before the violence of January 6th.
It absolutely does. And then, I just want to be clear here, Bannon has admitted that your and Bob Costas reporting was correct. Here he is.
This illegitimate regime is starting to collapse. You know, there's a quote from me, I guess, in the book, and they're all over about it, that I was talking to the president in late January that we could kill the illegitimate Biden regime in the crib. Well, guess what? It killed itself. But we told you from the very beginning, just expose it, never back down, never give up, and this thing will implode.
So how crucial is Bannon to the committee's investigation from all of your reporting?
I'm sorry, what?
How crucial is Bannon to the investigation?
Look, everyone's crucial, but you have to tell the whole story. And the whole story would involve not just Bannon, but key people in the Trump circle, people from the White House, people from maybe the CIA. I mean, one thing we have in our book, just to be very specific, this is 1 week after the election last year. Gina Haspel, the CIA director, is quoted. This is on November 10th. This is the day after Trump has fired Secretary of Defense Esper, somebody very well respected in the national security community, somebody who graduated from West Point with then Secretary of State Pompeo. So what does Gina Haspel say? Yesterday was appalling. We are on the way to a right-wing coup. The whole thing is insanity. Trump, is acting out like a 6-year-old with a tantrum. That is one of the most expert analysts, she's not there now, in the U.S. government. Somebody who spent 35 years trying to understand instability. And you heard her assessment. It could not be clearer.
No, it could not be. Bob, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for sharing some with us. Thanks.
Thank you.